On my wedding day, looking at the delicate features of the bride in front of me, I suddenly felt a sense of meaninglessness. The host asked me, the groom, "Do you, the groom, take Liu Ryan to be your lawful wife?" I smiled and said, "I don't. Liu Ryan and I have been entangled for 12 years. How many 12 years are there in a lifetime? Liu Ryan, as you wish. I'll return your freedom." Leaving these words behind, I turned around and walked away without looking back, checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and just buried myself in sleep. In my dreams, it seemed like I had returned to the year I was 16. When I first met Liu Ryan, she was still a naive young girl. At that time, my parents had passed away in a car accident, leaving behind a large compensation sum. Whoever got custody of me would have the right to manage that money. True love or real gold? Which is more genuine? I didn't know. I told the lawyer, "I don't need a guardian before I come of age. Just let that money sit quietly." My grandmother called me ungrateful, said that my uncle had been so good to me. My aunt said, "How could I be so heartless? Couldn't I just help him out a little?" I coldly dragged my suitcase away. Because they forgot. Before this, they all said my parents were killed by my cursed fate. I transferred myself to another school and also rented a new apartment. I thought I would be very strong. But until I was burning with fever, shaking all over, struggling to buy medicine, it was the first time I truly felt helpless and alone. That day in that narrow and dim hallway, I met Liu Ryan. She walked against the light, as if sent by the heavens to redeem me. She walked straight towards me. I collapsed into her arms. At 16, I was certain that Liu Ryan was the light leading me out of the darkness, and I was bedridden for half a month. It was Liu Ryan who lived across from me, who took care of me the entire time. When her parents found out about me, they treated me very well too. At 16, after losing my parents and being betrayed by my relatives, I was fortunate enough to find warmth again. I clung to that warmth tightly, letting it reignite my life. After recovering from the fever, Liu Ryan accompanied me on walks outside. We sat on the lawn, basking in the sunlight. She quietly looked at me and smiled, saying, "Jiboda, I am your lifesaver. You must repay the debt of saving your life. I must repay this life-saving favor." The bright smile of the young girl was deeply engraved in my memory from that moment on. I smiled and asked her, "So, my lifesaver, how should I repay you?" She blushed, but hesitated, unable to speak the next words for a long time. After transferring schools, Liu Ryan and I became deskmates. She was very good at her studies. All the questions I couldn't solve, she could, and she was always gentle and patient in teaching me. Until I truly understood. Looking back on that time, my heart still feels warm. I loved Liu Ryan back then, and I believe she loved me as much as I loved her. But people change. Love fades. The reason people feel warmth is because the cold constantly reminds them of it. When I woke up from my uneasy dream, it was already the next afternoon. There were many unread messages on my phone. I glanced through them quickly. Most were from friends. "Jiboda, you and Liu Ryan have been together for so many years. How could you call off the wedding just like that? What a pity. Jiboda, you two were the envy of everyone. How could this happen?" I didn't have the energy to explain much, especially when Liu Ryan's call came through. "Where are you?" Just those 3 simple words. Yet I could hear endless impatience in her voice, as if I were the one who had interrogated her countless times. I remember she wasn't like this before. Every word she used to say was filled with tenderness. Even just hearing her say my name would melt my heart. When did she start to change? In 8 days. Her questioning came like a barrage. What do you mean, Boda? How have I wronged you? Why would you embarrass me in front of so many relatives and friends? What nonsense are you up to again? Who do you think you're giving that cold face to? All these years, you've always been like this. I should never have saved you back then. Yes, all these years of feelings. I've regretted them for many years. But even now, she still thinks I'm just acting out. Just causing trouble with her. I'll come back tonight, we can meet. We can regret it. Or we can watch the bubble burst. But I need to give these past 12 years an explanation. She let out a cold laugh. I don't have time. The time I set aside for the wedding was squeezed out. I told you to wait a little longer. But you insisted on this timing. After saying that, she didn't forget to add a mocking comment. You wanted to get married. So I went along with you. What more do you want? How cheap I must be. After all these years. In the end, I became the one forcing it. Her reluctance was evident. And I lost the motivation to push any further. I know you're busy, so there's no need for this wedding anymore. It'll save you some time. She lowered her voice and angrily roared, Boda. Do you think marriage is a joke? If we don't get married now, then don't ever mention marriage again. How could there possibly be a future for us after this? At this moment, he still thought I was just causing a scene, using the future as a threat to make me compromise. He was silent for a long time. When there was finally a sound, it was the beeping of the call ending. I smiled, but it was the most bitter smile. No matter what happened between Liu Ryan and me, after all, I grew up in the Liu family. Liu's mother had always treated me well. Things need to have a proper conclusion. I had to give her an explanation. It was just about lunchtime. We agreed to meet at a nearby restaurant. When I arrived, Liu's mother had a face full of worrying, but she still forced a smile the moment she saw me. I felt a bit uncomfortable, especially when I saw the table full of my favorite dishes. My nose tingled with emotion. Annie quickly invited me to sit down and asked how I was doing. Of course, I wasn't doing well, but I still said I was fine. She didn't say much, just quietly watched me eat. I hadn't eaten anything since yesterday, so I was starving by the time I finished the meal. She hid the loving expression on her face, but Liu's mother couldn't conceal her concern. She held my hand, looked me up and down, and suddenly tears welled up in her eyes. How did you get so thin, Boda? No matter what, you must remember to eat well. Such care! I had lost it for many years and then found it again. But I didn't know how long I could keep it. Holding back my urge to cry, I smiled and said, Auntie, I will make sure to eat well. Liu's mother sighed deeply and gently touched my face. Boda, you and Xiaoyan. How did it come to this? At that moment, my tears burst out uncontrollably. The emotional walls I had built up crumbled in an instant. Yes, how did we end up like this? Was it time? Or was it that people's hearts changed too easily? I didn't explain much to Liu's mother. Reaching this point today, there isn't much meaning in saying anything. Liu's mother didn't say much either. She just asked me to think it over carefully and not to betray myself. In fact, between Liu Ryan and me, if everything had gone smoothly, it would have been fine. But things didn't go as we wished. Liu's father had a sudden heart attack, and the expensive medical bills put this ordinary family on the brink of collapse. The living expenses for the family of 3 all depended on Liu's mother's work. Liu Ryan was very diligent. Her grades were always at the top, But when we both got accepted into prestigious universities, on the night the acceptance letters arrived, Liu's mother smiled through her tears. "My child, you've done well. But I'm sorry." Liu Ryan sat on the sofa, her head down, filled with gloom. When she finally looked up again, her smile was still considerate but heartbreaking. "It's okay, Mom. I know Dad just had surgery. We don't have money. I don't need to go to college. I can go to work and support us." She pretended to be calm and unaffected, but she was far too practiced at it. Yet her slightly reddened eyes hit me right in the heart. On the balcony in the night breeze, her silhouette looked so frail. At that moment, I remembered many nights ago, when she held me up in the night wind. I quietly walked up to her, forcing a casual smile. "I'm a little rich guy. Lifesaver. Do you want me to repay you?" She hesitated for a second, then her face darkened. "Boda, how could I possibly use your money? Absolutely not. Back then, I didn't understand. We clearly loved each other. So why wouldn't she accept my help? That was our first fight. All the way until dawn. In the cold air, our lips trembled slightly. I compromised, thinking she was just being cautious, protecting her own dignity. In truth, between her pride and me, she had already made her choice long ago, but going to university was non-negotiable. I joined Liu Ryan in working part-time jobs to earn money. At first, she worked as a tutor. Thanks to her excellent exam results, many parents were willing to hire her. Soon, she took on more and more work. But of course, envy followed. A child falsely accused her of abuse, crying as they did. After that, no one wanted to hire her anymore. The frustrated young girl clenched the teaching materials in her hand, as if the whole world had turned its back on her. I patted her shoulder. "It's okay. We can deliver food together. And if that doesn't work, we can hand out flyers." She pulled me into her embrace. The faint jasmine scent that used to linger around her had long faded away, but I still remember it even now. "I'm sorry, Boda. I will cherish you. And I'll make it up to you in the future." That entire summer, the relentless sun and the sweat dripping down my face didn't make me feel sad. On the contrary, the future that the girl of summer promised me made me believe deeply. At that time, we never thought that such sincere and passionate love would eventually disappear in the river of time. I wandered the streets alone, aimless and without purpose. My phone kept buzzing. When I checked, I saw it was my schoolmates in the campus group chat. They were discussing the situation between Liu Ryan and me. There were many voices in the conversation, but they all meant the same thing. What had happened to the golden couple? Liu Ryan and me? Since I was also in the group, their speculations weren't as direct, but what I didn't expect was that one of the senior students directly mentioned Liu Ryan by name and said, "Some women are just airheads. Not only are they useless themselves, but they also can't stand others being better than them." In an instant, the group chat fell completely silent, even though it was a virtual online world. I could feel the awkward chill in the air. Liu Ryan, of course, wouldn't respond to the senior student's comment. The group chat fell into silence once more. I casually bought a cup of milk tea. There were many people on the street, but it felt like I couldn't hear any of them. I had been hungry for a long time, but even eating and drinking felt lethargic. When my phone vibrated again, it was someone in the group. The senior, Itu Makoto, sent a sweating and side-glancing emoji first. Then a long string of text followed. Senior, are you misunderstanding something? You don't really know Liu Ryan at all. Isn't your comment a bit too biased? Did someone tell you something? The senior's reply was quick. Oh, I wondered who it was. Isn't this the infamous one? Who knew someone had a boyfriend, but still clung to them? Itu Makoto, the green tea boy? Don't think everyone is like Liu Ryan. I don't know what you're up to, but if you love drama, I'll set the stage for you tomorrow. The senior's words were sharp and unforgiving, but I thought they matched Itu Makoto's behavior. I glanced at the cloudy sky, feeling the light was almost too glaring. I lowered my head. Coincidentally, the milk tea I just bought was also green tea flavored. I smiled slightly, tears welling up at the corners of my eyes. When did Itu Makoto come between Liu Ryan and me? Liu's father's illness kept recurring, usually managed by medication. During that time, Liu's mother fell ill, and the family's financial situation worsened again. Liu's father stopped taking his medication for a while, but eventually his old illness flared up again. He was rushed to the emergency room. The doctor said a second surgery was needed. For the Liu family, this was no small expense. Without a second thought, I paid for the surgery. The doctor, sweating at the door of the ward, announced that the surgery was successful. Liu Ryan, who had been keeping her head down, suddenly looked up. With a strange light in her eyes, she stared at me, speaking slowly but with firm resolve. Boda, thank you. Really, thank you. I smiled and gently embraced her. We're family. No need to be so polite. She held me tightly, as if she wanted to merge me into her being. I don't know how long we stayed like that, but by the time she had the strength to enter the ward, a large part of my shoulder was already wet. I thought, Liu Ryan, you truly deserve all the kindness I've shown you. Later, in Liu's father's hospital room, I met Itu Makoto for the first time. He was dressed casually, and his smile revealed to deep dimples. He placed fruit and milk on the table, and warmly asked Liu's father, Uncle, are you feeling any better? Liu's father seemed a bit confused, so Liu Ryan introduced him. This is Itu Makoto, my junior, who's been working on a research project with me. Liu's mother frowned, subtly observing Itu Makoto. Itu Makoto, realizing this a bit late, quickly walked over to Liu's mother, still smiling warmly as ever. Auntie, hello! Oh, I brought some soup my mom made for Uncle. It's nourishing for patients. Liu Ryan also smiled. Yes, Auntie, she's really good at cooking. Itu Makoto's gaze shifted to Liu Ryan, and the intense, almost blatant affection was unmistakable. He liked Liu Ryan. I could feel it. And it was the kind of love that wouldn't take no for an answer. Itu Makoto stayed in the hospital room for over 20 minutes. He said goodbye and left. I went out to ask the doctor about Liu's father's condition. When I returned, I happened to overhear Liu's mother warning Liu Ryan. Xiaoyan, what's going on between you and that boy? Liu Ryan might have been stunned for a second, then she denied it. What could be going on? Mom, don't overthink it. There's nothing between us. We're just ordinary friends. Liu's mother sighed in relief. That's good, Xiaoyan. You must never let Boda down. Liu Ryan's tone was sincere, at least in that moment. Don't worry, I won't. So I didn't feel particularly guarded about Itu Makoto's presence. I believed in my relationship with Liu Ryan that it wouldn't be affected by a third party. But what I didn't expect was how frequently Itu Makoto would appear. Liu Ryan, who had never been one to play on her phone much, began texting more often on WeChat. Sometimes she would smile at her phone screen when I finished work and leaned against her, smiling and asking what was so funny. She would jump slightly, suddenly turning off her phone screen and awkwardly say nothing. Someone just sent me a funny emoji. I know my actions were a bit shameful, but I couldn't stand the feeling of suspicion and torment. One night, while she was asleep, I looked through her WeChat messages. Sure enough, it was with Itu Makoto. Good morning, senpai. Is there any chance that Lazybones is still in bed at this hour? Get up already. I'm going to the park with my classmates today. I'll send you some nice pictures later. I think the Lazybones is you. Remember that camping trip? We were supposed to go hiking. But who ended up sleeping next to me for 3 hours, even poking you with a straw wouldn't wake you up. She didn't even have time to kiss me in the morning. Yet she could exchange good mornings with another boy. They were almost constantly sharing their daily lives with each other. In her phone's photo album, there were even a few pictures of Itu Makoto at the park. Although their words didn't cross any serious boundaries. After reading that part, I felt a cold chill throughout my body. Senpai, I really want to eat green pepper steak. Didn't you say last time that you're really good at making it? You're so amazing. I can't even make it. Liu Ryan sent a smug emoji in response. Itu Makoto replied with a pitiful emoji. So can I have some green pepper steak tomorrow for lunch? Sure, I'll make you a big portion. Just don't hurt your stomach from eating too much. Itu Makoto sent a simple, honest smiley face. It's okay if it hurts. Last time when I sprained my ankle, weren't you the one who took me to the hospital? Liu Ryan responded with a troublesome emoji. After reading all this, I put down her phone and looked at her peaceful, sleeping face beside me. She looked just like she always did. Yet somehow, she didn't seem quite the same anymore. When did it start that the things she should have been doing with me were being done with another boy? The green pepper steak I thought was just for me ended up being served to another boy. The girl who was supposed to be mine didn't seem as pure as she once was. I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning. I didn't even know if I should ask her about it. Tomorrow is my birthday. Should I still save her a spot at the restaurant I booked? Of course, she didn't come. It seemed she had forgotten while she was busy delivering food to another boy. Meanwhile, there was another boy on his birthday, longing and hoping to catch a glimpse of her. It wasn't until I called her in the evening that she suddenly realized and apologized. I'm sorry, Boda. I've been so busy. I forgot about it recently. Don't worry, I'll make it up to you. She said she wouldn't be back until midnight. She had a pile of data to analyze today. I said, oh, and hung up the phone. I brought the meal I had prepared to the school. Just as I entered the gate, a torrential rain began to pour down. I was soaked to the skin, shivering with cold. My vision blurred in the rain, but I could still clearly see the girl who once gave me warmth, the one who promised to give me a sense of security, had given that comfort to Itu Makoto. They were holding hands, carefully and with solemn expressions, stepping over a puddle. Itu Makoto was there, laughing gently beside her. She pulled out one hand, holding an umbrella with raindrops dripping down from it. She turned to her eyes full of care. The two of them exchanged a glance. Smiling sweetly, I dialed Liu Ryan's number and saw her take her phone out of her pocket only for Itu Makoto to snatch it away. He hung up the call and the phone fell to the ground, along with the meal I had prepared. I began to question our 12-year relationship. It no longer seemed as unbreakable as I had imagined. In fact, it felt riddled with flaws from the start. I remember that night's rain was heavy. So heavy that I still remember it today. As cold as an ice cellar. Just like now. The sky started to drizzle again. I couldn't help but smile bitterly. The heavens have never been fair to me. Why is it always when I'm at my lowest that it delivers the final blow? I threw away the milk tea. As I turned around, a car stopped beside me. Liu Ryan opened the door, holding a card in her hand. Her face was grim, full of anger. She threw the card at my feet. Jibota, this is the card you gave my mom. What do you mean by this? Is it a breakup fee? I glanced at it. Indeed, it was the one I had just given to Liu's mother. I nodded, but before I could say a word, Liu Ryan suddenly gripped my wrist tightly. Do you really think that money can solve everything? I was once her Jibota. But now I was just another Jibota, no different from anyone else, addressed by name without any affection. Our 12 years together seemed unchanged on the surface, but in reality, everything had long since been different. Yet I couldn't deny that she was still Liu Ryan. The Liu Ryan I had once loved, no matter where our paths might lead. I wanted this relationship to remain beautiful in my heart. So I explained. Over the years, Annie has treated me better than a biological son. That money was just my way of showing respect to her. She let out a cold laugh, shook her head, her face full of disdain. She's my mother. I can take care of her myself. I don't need you to do it. That's for the best. I nodded. Then let's consider it a breakup fee. Her face turned red with anger, but her eyes were icy cold. Jibota, what exactly do you want? My patience has limits. I took a deep breath, looked up at the sky. Raindrops hit my forehead, both painful and cold, but they cleared my mind a lot. At least I never want to be caught in the rain again. Let's break up. My heart ached, but the heaviness in my legs seemed to lighten. Liu Ryan, 12 years of feelings have become a burden for you now. We're both exhausted. I'm willing to give you the freedom you desire. The fierce redness in her eyes began to fade. What was left was a look of bewilderment. She stood there stunned for a long time, finally locking eyes with me, as if trying to verify something. Are you serious? I looked at her and nodded. Her expression stiffened, her lips trembling with an almost imperceptible quiver. Jibota, I can tolerate you turning me into a joke at the wedding, but don't keep pushing my limits. I let out a cold laugh and asked her, limits? Liu Ryan, what are your limits? I asked her seriously, staring deeply into her eyes, hoping to see the answer I was searching for. My limits? Jibota, my limits. You really don't know? Yes, I knew. Maybe I didn't think deeply about it when I was young. But by the time we graduated, I first realized that perhaps for Liu Ryan, it was fine for her to accept that I was excellent, but it was difficult for her to accept that I was better than her. After graduation, Liu Ryan and I made different choices. She wanted to stay at our school to continue her graduate studies. But with her family's situation being tough, I suggested, why don't I start working instead? At that time, she gripped my hand tightly and firmly said, no, if anyone is going to work, it's going to be me. You should focus on your studies. She looked at me and smiled again. Besides, it's not easy to find a job right now. I'm worried you might not find one. Back then, I didn't think much of it, but looking back now, I realized that look in her eyes was an inexplicable mix of doubt and dismissal. If I can't find one, then I'll come back for grad school. Don't worry about me. I thought my reassurance was a way to comfort her, but she seemed to see it as stubbornness. She frowned and stood up. Boda, why do you never listen to me? When I say you won't find a job, you won't. Actually, from that moment on, I started to feel that her personality was a bit strange. Many things I did with the intention of being good for her. But in the end, it seemed like I was the one who had made a mistake. That night, we argued for a long time, neither of us willing to back down. It eventually escalated into a big fight. And then she smashed the teacup I had given her and stormed out. As I looked at the mess of broken pieces on the floor, I felt like my heart had been sliced open by a small blade. I was terrified of the feeling of loss. I had once lost the most important thing in my life, and I didn't want to endure that pain again. I couldn't breathe, but I still shakily chased after her. At that moment, all I could see was the back of that girl. I didn't notice the small car speeding towards me on the road. It hit me and knocked me down. In the chaos that followed, just before I lost consciousness, the last image I saw was her face. When I woke up again, Liu Ryan was standing by my bedside, her eyes red for the first time. Boda, you're finally stable. I'm so sorry, really, I'm sorry. She gripped my right hand tightly, her knuckles turning white from the pressure. Her face was filled with overwhelming guilt. In that moment, I suddenly realized that the teacup didn't matter anymore. The girl was still in front of me. Anything could be replaced or bought again. I smiled awkwardly through the bandages. It wasn't a pretty sight. It's okay, she said as she held me. Let's not fight anymore in the future. Alright, Boda, you have no idea how worried I was at that moment in the warmth of her embrace. A foolish thought sprouted in my mind. If Liu Ryan and I could live in harmony and happiness for a lifetime, I would willingly get hit by a car every day and still be content. She said many apologies, but in truth, I didn't blame her. In the room, there was another person, a short-haired young woman. She looked sharp and capable, and when she spoke, every word was clear. Excuse me, let me introduce myself briefly. I'm Su Yang. It was me who accidentally hit you, but what I didn't expect was that Su Yang would become a mentor in my life. We both shared an interest in machinery, and she invited me to start a business with her, guarding the prospects and direction. She laid out a flawless plan. It was easy for me to understand. I told Liu Ryan about it, and she smiled and said, starting a business isn't a simple thing. Due to my hospitalization, she didn't argue with me again. When I started the business with Su Yang, she repeatedly said, you guys are just playing around. You won't last long. I didn't take it to heart. Su Yang had a deep understanding of the market, and I was strong in execution. The days of entrepreneurship were not as smooth as we had imagined. Sometimes we would go to days without sleep, just to revise a plan overnight. But as they say, heaven rewards the diligent. We gradually started to see progress. Up until now, the business has been doing increasingly well, and we've secured our place in the industry. Liu Ryan no longer poured cold water on my efforts. But now that I think back, it seems that from that time on, we started talking less and less. Silent departures had somehow replaced our morning kisses. The green pepper steak had long since turned into leftover takeout she casually brought home, even at night when we lay in bed together. She would always turn her back to me. She said she had been deeply immersed in academic research lately. She was busy, but I was also very busy at that time. So busy that I didn't have time to care about these things. So busy that I didn't notice the girl beside me gradually drifting away. But if I were mediocre, would Liu Ryan really come back to me with complete devotion? I didn't dare to bet on it. I used to love her deeply, but I'm the type of person who always considers the worst possible outcome. If I made her love the meaning of my life, then if she stopped loving me, would I have to die? I couldn't do that. Liu Ryan doesn't matter anymore. I no longer care about her. So your limits, your pride as a woman, I no longer care to consider them. Boda, it's been 12 years. Everyone knows we're inseparable. Why are you making such a fuss? Do you really think this is necessary? This will only make me despise you more. Despise me? Would anyone want to spend their life with someone they despise? Does Itu Makoto know? Liu Ryan froze for a moment. Why are you bringing him up? What does he have to do with this? Everyone knows we're inseparable. But does Itu Makoto know? It seemed like I had hit a sore spot. Boda, stop dragging unrelated people into this. You want to break up? Fine, just don't regret it. I shook my head, my voice calm. I won't after all these years together. You should know my personality. I never regret my decisions. She got into the car, slammed the door hard, and drove away, splashing mud all over me. Look at the person I once loved. She doesn't even have the courage to admit she strayed in our relationship. I should have let her go sooner. I moved out, bought a house that wasn't too big or too small, and the surroundings were very quiet. After learning about what happened between us, the senior suggested bringing her friends over to warm up my new place. Worried that I might be upset or do something rash, they even brought alcohol along and cooked a few dishes. We gathered around the dining table. At first, no one brought up the topic of me and Liu Ryan. But eventually, they began to realize that after ending this 12-year relationship, I wasn't as heartbroken as they had imagined. Yes, even I hadn't expected it. After losing Liu Ryan, I only occasionally thought of her in lonely moments and felt a dull ache. After all, I had long since understood that life is meant to be lived for oneself, and my life was never solely about Liu Ryan. Curiosity couldn't be held back. A few classmates couldn't help but ask me, "Why did you break up with Liu Ryan? I remember you two were really close." My response was simple and precise. Maybe we just fell out of love. We were both tired, the atmosphere grew quiet. Their expressions became unreadable, but the truth was just that. Love isn't reckless. It's a responsibility. In a relationship, we might grow weary, but we shouldn't be unfaithful. Someone who is fickle in love isn't what I want for my future. With my classmates' company, I indeed felt much better than before. And with business matters keeping me so busy, I quickly grew accustomed to living alone. But it seemed Liu Ryan hadn't adjusted. She appeared at my doorstep, her eyes sunken. Even her figure had noticeably thinned. I was a bit surprised. After all, in my memory, Liu Ryan had always been full of spirit. I had never seen her looking so defeated. Such a disheveled appearance was entirely new to me. She smiled at me. Her radiant smile, once so bright, now seemed tainted. It made me feel deeply uncomfortable. It felt as if she was ruining the beautiful memories I had. Boater, I've got some free time lately. Don't worry. How about we pick a date and rebook the restaurant for the wedding? I've already explained last time's situation to our relatives and friends. They'll understand. Her tone carried a hint of pleading. My chest tightened with discomfort. But I knew there was no going back for us. Just like now, even though she's softly calling me Boater, I can't help but remember the look in her bloodshot eyes when she gritted her teeth and called my name. No, Liu Ryan. I've already given you your freedom. Our past was beautiful. So let's let it stay beautiful in our memories. No one is indispensable to anyone. Wouldn't it be better to move forward and embrace the future we each deserve? Her eyes turned red. She softly said, Boater. What went wrong with us? What happened that made things turn out like this? Yes, why? You should ask yourself that. Liu Ryan, please leave. She grabbed my hand. Shaking her head, I won't leave. Boater, have you forgotten our promise? We agreed to buy a big villa, have 2 children, and live happily ever after. The promise we made back then was indeed beautiful, but someone broke the balance between us first. I'm not as strong as I appear to be. Honestly, I have a bit of an obsession with purity in relationships. Once I sense something, or someone doesn't belong to me, I tend to erase my mark on it. Yes, I bought the villa, and I treated your parents well. I kept our promise. But what about you? She stood there speechless. I looked into her eyes. Do you still love me? Of course, I love you. I let out a cold laugh. But do you only love me? She hesitated, guilt evident in her silence. But the answer was already clear. Wasn't it? I sighed. Liu Ryan, I don't want to make things any uglier than they already are. I once loved you deeply, and I believe you loved me too. But now it's time to let go. She lowered her head and walked away. Her silhouette was still as frail as ever. But the passion I once felt was gone. I can no longer provide her warmth. Liu's mother called me, inviting me over to their house for dinner. After all, I had lived with them for many years and still had some belongings left behind. When I arrived, besides the 3 of them, there were also several close relatives present. At the dinner table, the relatives took on the role of peacemakers, each offering their advice. Boater, my boy, Uncle has always thought highly of you since you were little. Now you've grown tall and handsome, and you have a good job too. Isn't it time to seriously consider settling down? Exactly. And he remembers that you and Xiaoyan have always been close. She told us about what happened last time, and admitted it was her fault. As women, all we want in this life is a good home. Don't be too harsh. No matter how good your job is, it's not as important as finding a good wife. Liu Ryan is a wonderful girl too, after all these years together. How can you just decide to part ways? You're both adults now. Don't be so childish, okay? Liu's mother also held my hand, sighing as she said, all the fault lies with our Ryan. Child, if there's anything you're unhappy about, just tell her. She wouldn't dare say anything, but Annie feels for you. I know Xiaoyan still loves you. Human nature truly seeks benefit and avoids harm. No matter how much she may see me as her son-in-law for life, but in the end, she is still Liu Ryan's mother. As for what those Liu family relatives are saying, what does it matter to me? I've already made up my mind to cut ties cleanly. I smiled, raised my glass, and toasted each person in turn. Thank you all for your care over the years. regarding Liu Ryan and me. Perhaps you don't know the whole story. I'm no longer a child, and I have my own judgments about things. In a while, I'll be moving to work in another city. Please take care of yourselves. The relatives exchanged glances, a bit awkward. Second uncle frowned at me, clearing his throat. You boy. Why are you so ungrateful? My Xiaoyan has been with you since she was a teenager. She spent all these years on you, and now that you're successful, you're just going to leave her behind? Who do we complain to about this? Andy chimed in as well. Yes, Xiaoyan even saved your life once. How can you be so ungrateful? I let out a cold laugh and looked at Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan looked back at me, sighing. Jiboda, after 12 years together, are you really willing to let it all go? I smiled, raising an eyebrow as I looked at second uncle. Love is between two people, isn't it? When we got together, if she didn't want to, I couldn't have held a knife to her throat and forced her to be with me, could I? These past years, you say they were wasted on Liu Ryan, but do you think they weren't wasted on me as well? You're a man. How can you think that a man's youth is less valuable than a woman's? And as for me being successful, that success is due to my own hard work. Ask Liu Ryan. Did she contribute anything? Second uncle's face turned pale. His ears reddened as he struggled to find words. I looked at Auntie, and with a frown said, yes. Liu Ryan once saved my life, but I also saved Uncle Liu's life. Even parents who give life to their children can't expect them to spend their entire lives repaying that debt, can they? I have shown filial piety to Uncle and Auntie, and in all these years with Liu Ryan, I've always considered her first in everything. I have a clear conscience. Auntie's face wasn't much better than second uncle's. Finally, I turned a cold gaze toward Liu Ryan. Liu Ryan, before you ask me if I can let go of these years of feelings, ask yourself first. Weren't you the one who abandoned me first? Her eyes started to avoid mine. When I was buying the house, you said you had a conference. When I was doing the renovations, you said you had an academic meeting. When I was buying furniture, you were still very busy. Do you know? That was our promise, not just my own promise. When everything was finally done, you came by quickly to take a look. And with a sarcastic tone, you said, "Gee, Boater, you really have money." Liu Ryan's face turned red with embarrassment. I asked her, "Don't you remember?" Liu Ryan shook her head, hastily trying to explain, "No. I was just making a casual remark." I stood up and questioned her. On my birthday, what were you doing? When I set the wedding date, what were you doing? And when I was picking out wedding items, what were you doing? Liu Ryan's eyes darted back and forth, but she couldn't find the words to respond. I let out a cold laugh and took out some photos. Let me show you. The first one shows Ito Makoto sitting beside her, holding a lunchbox, and she's feeding him green pepper steak with chopsticks. On my birthday, you made my favorite green pepper steak and fed it to another boy. The second photo shows Ito Makoto holding your arm, looking at you with eyes full of admiration while you enjoy every moment. On the day we set the wedding date, when you were supposed to be attending an academic meeting, you were at the outskirts park, spending a wonderful time alone with Ito Makoto. The third photo shows you and Ito Makoto hugging, both of you with your eyes closed, smiling happily and brightly. When I was out picking wedding items, you left your fiancé behind and went to an amusement park with another boy. If I'm not mistaken, on the Ferris wheel, he kissed you and you didn't refuse. The relatives fell silent. Liu's mother and father stared angrily at Liu Ryan. I looked at her as well. Liu Ryan, is this what you call loving me? She was extremely embarrassed, but still forced herself to say, "You actually spied on me?" "Spy on you?" I let out a mocking laugh. I was so busy at that time. No one was there to share my burdens. Where would I have found the time to spy on you? These are photos from Itu Makoto's social media. Where you went. What you did. He documented it clearly. Why would Itu Makoto do this? It's simple, he wanted me to know. Itu Makoto is a true green tea boy. But Liu Ryan, you couldn't withstand the test. As the saying goes, flies don't land on seamless eggs. Liu Ryan opened her mouth. But in the end, she could only make a simple sound. I shook my head. Liu Ryan, at first I wanted to leave you some dignity. Not because I still loved you, but because I didn't want my beautiful memories to be tainted with flaws. What I cherish isn't you. It's the 12 years of feelings I invested. Liu Ryan stood there at a loss, finally managing to say, "G. Boder, let me explain. I never had any ill intentions toward you. I just waved my hand." Cutting her off. "Alright, no need to say more. It's unnecessary. And it doesn't matter anymore. Let's just end it here." I turned to grab my bag, when suddenly I heard a sharp sound. I looked back to see a red handprint on Liu Ryan's face. Liu's mother was furious. "How could you do this? Tuji Boda? I worked so hard to raise you. How did you turn out to be such a disloyal, shameless wretch?" It was clear that Liu's mother was genuinely angry. Liu Ryan kept her head down, not daring to say a word. Liu's mother scolded her for a long time before finally turning to me, crying as she grabbed my hand. "Boder, don't do this." She was wrong, she really was. If she weren't my own daughter, I would have beaten her to death. I hugged Liu's mother. "It's already happened, Auntie. This isn't your fault." Liu's mother wiped her tears, staring at me. "Child, please forgive Xiaoyan. You've helped our family so much. I really don't want to see you hurt like this. Stay, I promise. Liu Ryan will treat you well from now on." She shot a glare at Liu Ryan, who quickly came over to apologize. I pushed her away. "Auntie, Liu Ryan and I can't be together anymore. Thank you for all your care over the years. If there's anything I can help with in the future, please don't hesitate to call me. I won't be changing my number." With that, I went to pack my things. Liu Ryan followed me to my room, grabbing my arm, her face full of remorse. "G. Boda, I understand now. Please don't leave me. I promise you, I'll never do this again. I don't like Itu Makoto. Please believe me, okay?" With that, she took out her phone, and in front of me, deleted Itu Makoto's WeChat. She even blocked his number. She sincerely said, "I only love you from when I was 16 until now." Honestly, given my years of experience with Liu Ryan, she might not truly like Itu Makoto, but she really couldn't see through Itu Makoto's intentions. Didn't she realize that her ambiguous relationship with Itu Makoto was hurting me? She was aware that she was addicted to Itu Makoto's admiration, using it to sustain her own unhealthy sense of self-esteem. From the moment she chose to engage in this vague, unclear relationship, any later realizations would be worthless to me. Her indulgence, her fleeting infidelity, she knew it would hurt me. Yet she still went ahead with it. There was no going back for us. "Let it go, Liu Ryan. I said, I've told you before, I don't regret my actions, and I won't take back my words." After packing up my belongings, I said goodbye to Auntie Liu. Most of the relatives had already left. In the now empty living room, Auntie Liu was sobbing uncontrollably, almost collapsing to the ground. Fortunately, I caught her, child. Without you, your uncle would have died long ago. Our family wouldn't have had such good times. It's all Liu Ryan's fault. It's all her fault. Can you forgive Xiaoyan? I'm begging you. I gently wiped away her tears and said softly, Auntie, neither you nor the Liu family owes me anything. The warmth you once gave me, I'll never forget for the rest of my life. I left the Liu family home with my belongings. As the door closed behind me, my own tears finally fell. From now on, Boda, you're alone again. I moved to another city and quickly adapted to my new life. The senior often kept in touch with me and occasionally teased me. Oh, Boda, you really are pitiful, aren't you? All I have left is money and nothing else. But aside from that, she also told me many other things. After we broke up, Liu Ryan didn't end up with Itu Makoto either. Liu Ryan got angry with Itu Makoto, said a lot of harsh words, and Itu Makoto eventually gave up on his feelings for her. It seems Itu Makoto had some psychological issues. He didn't like normal girls but was drawn to those already taken. He fell for another graduate student. But unfortunately, this senior was already married. Perhaps he found some confidence with Liu Ryan. So he tried the same tricks again, constantly chatting with her, asking her out. But this senior's husband wasn't one to be messed with. All the seductive photos and suggestive messages Itu Makoto sent were printed out by her husband and plastered around Itu Makoto's neighborhood. The husband even hung banners and used loudspeakers, playing them non-stop during the day for 8 hours. In Unit 1 on the 3rd floor, the Yuhui couple raised their child well. Their son Itu Makoto fell in love with my wife at first sight and pursued her relentlessly. Our community congratulates them on finding true love. In front of the neighbors, Itu Makoto's father slapped him hard across the face. This incident spread far and wide, and Itu Makoto ended up dropping out of school. I heard the whole family moved away. Where they went, no one knows. 12 years of friendship isn't just black and white. There was beauty but also pain. As for the bright, cheerful girl I once loved, she's gone from my life. I must continue moving forward towards the light, even if I'm alone. As for Liu Ryan, even though I've tried to avoid news about her, I found out years later that she remains single to this day. But what does it matter? Love that comes too late is worth less than dust.